So why is it, that one of these super large gifts like we were talking about, this $237 million gift, could get all the way to the point where they're announcing it and allowing that individual to even be the commencement speaker? How do we get to that point where the trustees weren't even made aware of a quote unquote transformational gift of that size? Well, here's the hard truth. Fundraising leaders, school presidents have a little bit of a conflict of interest sometimes when it comes to closing large gifts. Career advancement, meeting the expectations of boards, of bosses, it can be closely tied to closing large gifts. And when there's a lot of pressure in that situation to raise more and more money each and every year, leaders can be tempted to, maybe not do anything, not make up gifts, not invent gifts out of the blue. But when an opportunity like this comes along, maybe not to look so closely. The numbers are going to look really good. And with deferred gifts especially, people aren't going to know for years. You may not even be at that institution by the time the gift gets closed. Welcome to the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast. Whether you are a seasoned professional or a first-time fundraiser, we have the advice you need to take your next step toward major gift mastery. I'm your host, Tom Dauber, president of Abundant Vision Philanthropic Consulting. So recently, I was looking through the news feed, and I ran across a story in the Miami Herald about a $237 million gift to a Florida school. Now, the gift was made of privately held stock, and there were concerns that the value of that privately held stock was not accurate. This gift involved an NDA, so the school couldn't discuss the details, and it's been implied that the trustees were not made aware of the gift prior to the gift agreement being signed. So no one could discuss details either. To make matters worse, there was also evidence that another university, a few states north of Florida, had received a $95 million gift from the same individual, only to have that gift agreement be terminated by the university. As the journalists of the Miami Herald dug a little deeper and discovered that not only did this individual have a history of courting schools around large gifts, but the individual also seems to have a habit of announcing significant business ventures that never materialize. Now, I'm not involved with this. I'm looking at it from afar. Things do seem kind of fishy. The Herald also discovered that the same individual is putting up relatively small GoFundMe pages to help family members who are in various types of crises. And that seems unusual if someone's really wealthy, that they're going to be doing GoFundMe campaigns to raise a few $1,000s or something for a family member. Also seems odd that a person that could make a gift of that size, would be living with a parent and their family in a modest home. But that could happen. I mean, Warren Buffett lives in a modest home, but just a lot of things that I think are there that would make one question the nature of the gift and the credibility of the giver. Dubious gift discussions happen. With 25 years of experience, I can think of a number of times when donors came to me with dubious opportunities. Typically, these are going to be self-interested gifts. Oftentimes, the donor is looking to gain some type of benefit, make some money, potentially, get some type of tax advantage, or potentially get rid of something they don't want or don't need. Gifts of out-of-date technology is common. Businesses from time to time will call up nonprofits and say, "Hey, do you want 100 10-year-old computers that we don't want anymore because it's too old and doesn't work well?" Thinking that this local school would want them or have some use for them. And unfortunately, in some cases, nonprofits accept those, knowing that they don't have a use for it, but not wanting to turn down someone's generous intent. Gifts of vehicles are also common. So a lot of times these are gifts in kind, right? If I have a vehicle that maybe I don't think I can sell it for more than $1,000, but maybe Kelley Blue Book says it's worth $3,000. Well, why not donate that and then take the tax deduction for it. So, and there are some nonprofits that do a lot of that, and good things can happen. But we'll talk more about that later in the show. I think about a dentist who was selling some product out of her clinic. She was involved with an MLM, and I only found that out later. She was talking a lot about scholarship money and wanting to create a scholarship, and she seemed very interested in the things that I was talking to her about as a major gift fundraiser. And she invited me to come meet with her to talk with her more about how she could create a scholarship at the school. What it turned out to be was her trying to get me to sell the dental clinics on this MLM product, this multi-level marketing product that she sold out of her clinic. And what she wanted to do was to make money off the dental clinic and then give us a percentage towards scholarships. That was a disappointing meeting, I can tell you that. Another time, an alum wanted my employer to accept the donation of a property that had a business on it. And as it turned out, the more we talked with the individual, we discovered that the property had a mortgage on it. And so we did do our due diligence. We drove 2 hours to go see it, look at it. And of course, the university determined that they didn't want to own a piece of property that had a large mortgage on it and resell it to maybe make, $5,000, $10,000. That just didn't make any sense. But in this particular case, I think from a tax perspective, it was probably more advantageous for this donor to donate the property than it was for him to sell it because of capital gains and all that. Either way, the farther we went with that donor and had conversations with him about other gifts and cash gifts and things, as it turned out, his motive was really to try to induce the school to let his child attend. And I was working for a professional school at the time, and a lot of alumni would love to see their kids follow them into their profession. And he was under the impression that his kid was being turned down by the school. And over time, what we discovered was his kid never applied. His kid was telling the dad that he had applied for school, but in reality, he had no interest in applying for school or being in that profession, and just didn't know how to tell his dad. And of course, it wasn't our place to tell the dad about that. So anyway, it just got really awkward. But I've had many alumni talk to me about, can they make a gift that will get their kid into school? And of course, the answer is always no. Credible professional schools, and I've been privileged to work with some of the best health science colleges in the country. Do not admit students on the basis of alumni giving. Never. Now, self-interested gifts are especially bad at organizations that provide substantial benefits for donors. Think about, I don't know, high-value football tickets. I'm aware of one scheme in which faculty who were actually customers of a corporation and even paid by the corporation to give lectures to other clinicians, persuading them to use that product. Those faculty persuaded the corporation to give supplies and expendables and in some cases, maybe even capital equipment to the school, which good for them. Being a volunteer fundraiser is always appreciated, right? However, there was a catch. The donations made by the company were then credited to the faculty member. And so on paper, the soft credit or the gift recognition credit going to the faculty member made it look like the faculty member gave $1 million to the school, when in reality, they hadn't. But because of it, the faculty member got really choice football tickets, right? So that was problematic. I'm aware that has happened historically a lot at certain schools. Fortunately, many of those schools are tightening things up, seeing those abuses to the point now where at many of those schools you can't get gift recognition credit or soft credit for a corporate gift unless you're like the CEO or the owner or have some leadership position within that company. Now, I'm not meaning to say that all self-interested gifts are bad. Some of them are great and still very beneficial. When I think about, in a health sciences clinic, like a dental school, there's a lot of expendables. So dental companies frequently want to donate supplies and equipment to dental schools because there's a strong correlation between what dentists use in school and what they will purchase as a practice owner. And gifts of those expendable products can be especially helpful because it decreases overhead significantly. There are certain clinics that I'm aware of, like the ortho clinic, they used to get a lot of brackets. Tom Dauber here for Abundant Vision Academy. Are you a nonprofit leader who's new to fundraising? Are you feeling crushed by your fundraising goals and not sure how to find success? My online class, crafted from my 25 years of experience and more than 5,000 donor meetings, Abundant Vision Academy will give you the confidence and understanding you need to start building relationships with donors and having gift discussions in just 110 minutes. You'll get 14 videos covering all the topics you need to find success in fundraising. You can take it at your own pace and can watch as many times as you'd like. This is one of the best deals in fundraising continuing education you can get today. To make sure you get off to a strong start in 2024, I'm offering a 50% discount to anyone signing up for my course this spring. That's a $375 value. Enter the coupon code SPRING2024 at checkout to claim your 50% discount. That's SPRING 2024. Head on over to thomas-dauber-s-school.teachable.com and click on Abundant Vision Academy to get your discount today. The link is in the podcast description. For your teeth, donated, for braces. And that's just one less thing they have to buy. So that actually helps them generate more income off their clinics, which helps fund the mission of the school and educate future orthodontists. And that's a great thing. So no criticism there. It just is what it is. You just have to understand that, a company that, maybe they've got a history of seven-figure giving in expendables, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to count on them for seven-figure cash giving. I mean, keep in mind, those companies donating that equipment, it doesn't cost they're able to count the gift at the retail value, but that's not actually what it's costing the company to donate it. It's a fraction of that. So you just have to keep that in mind if you're doing corporate fundraising work. There are some win-wins that you can pursue that may not be really motivated by true philanthropy, but that doesn't mean you don't pursue them, because that can still be helpful. And used vehicles, which I mentioned before, there's some great organizations that are training young people in job skills, teaching them to be auto techs. And that's really useful. There's a good place for that. I've purchased a number of vehicles from those types of organizations, and most of the time it's turned out great. Sometimes it hasn't, but most of the time it's been a good value. So one other thing, and this is a personal story from my life as a student in higher ed. When I started in the computer graphics program at Bowling Green State University, go Falcons, we were working on Atari personal computers from the 80s. I think if you were lucky, you got to use the machine that had 1 meg of RAM. It was really sad. This would have been like 1990, maybe 6. Yeah, I think 1996. And we happened to have a faculty member who had a lot of connections with industry. He had been in industry himself, and the working for Lucasfilms and things like that as an animator. But he was able to get Silicon Graphics to donate us an entire room. I can't remember how many workstations. I mean, it might have been 50. It was a bunch of them. And those were valued at the time. They were selling for $40,000 per workstation. And there was also some other like some servers that were being used that were donated as well. And for me as a student to go from working on equipment from the 80s to the best equipment you could get was the same equipment they made Toy Story on. And I'm pretty sure it was the same equipment that they did Jurassic Park on. So really high-end equipment. That transformed the program. Today, that program is one of the top computer animation programs in the Midwest. But if you look at it carefully, that was a self-motivated gift For the company that donated it, which is out of business now, Silicon Graphics, so I won't offend anybody. My understanding, at least what I heard as a student, was that the software that you used on the machines they were donating cost $100,000 per license. And so if they trained us in it and sent us out of the workforce, they felt like they could sell more of their software. And you can imagine there's a lot of profit in selling software. But even still, it's a great example of a self motivated gift that was really transformative in every way for that program. And it's here we are 30 years later, and it's still made quite a difference. But that's not what I started talking about. I was talking about dubious gifts, gifts that not only are self motivated, but really don't create much benefit for the organization, the nonprofit. We would get all sorts of retirees and even families, especially after an alum might die, and they would have antique dental or pharmacy things like here's a pill box from 150 years ago that aspirin was sold in, or heroin, or because you could buy that at pharmacies 100 and some years ago. But the point being is we would get all sorts of tchotchkes like that they were cool. I'd see them, I'd be like, oh, that's neat, but we didn't have room at our school, and so we would have to politely turn them away. I can think of one incident where there were some things donated that were a little bit more on the valuable side, and we did accept them. But then, as it turned out, we had to spend tens of thousands of dollars to build appropriate cabinetry to hold those things. And so again, you're like, is this really a gift? We had to pay just as much to maintain it. That's another ploy I've seen in the dental space as well. There was one company that will remain unnamed, and they had offered free, kind of high end equipment to every dental school in the country, but it came with a $40,000 a year service agreement. Well, it just so happens that I discovered that they weren't actually they didn't provide the service themselves. There was another company that provided the services, and I was friends with the manager of that company, and so I just went over to him and I'm like, well, hey, this is the deal. Would you service the stuff for free for us if we accept it? Because our students are going to see the equipment, which is what you want, because you might be able to do business with them later. They agreed, and so we became the only dental school in the country to accept that gift. I think it was like $500,000 or something, without having to sign that onerous service agreement. So again, there's ways to get wins even in that type of situation. But then again, back to the original issue. So why is it, that one of these super large gifts, like we were talking about, this $237 million gift, could get all the way to the point where they're announcing it and allowing that individual to even be the commencement speaker? How do we get to that point where the trustees weren't even made aware of a quote unquote transformational gift of that size? Well, here's the hard truth. Fundraising leaders, school presidents have a little bit of a conflict of interest sometimes when it comes to closing large gifts. Career advancement, meeting the expectations of boards, of bosses, it can be closely tied to closing large gifts. And when there's a lot of pressure in that situation to raise more and more money each and every year, leaders can be tempted to, maybe not do anything, not make up gifts, not invent gifts out of the blue. But when an opportunity like this comes along, yeah, maybe not to look so closely. The numbers are going to look really good. And with deferred gifts especially, people aren't going to know for years. You may not even be at that institution by the time the gift gets closed. And I can tell you with gifts of privately held stock, a lot of times they have zero value to the institution unless there's someone prepared to buy it back, or and that could also happen through a sale, right? So I've been involved with one gift of privately held stock, and it was just a waiting game. He made the gift. Now we valued it at zero. Maybe we valued it at $1, right? And it just sat there, and we knew that retroactively, whenever it sold, we would go back and revalue that gift. But until then, you couldn't put a value on it because you didn't know what it was going to sell for. So in this case, I don't know. It seems kind of odd to me because a little due diligence, I think, would have shown that this person had kind of a history of gifts that are not accepted, and maybe even some questionable things with his business. Now, this may turn out to be a completely legit gift. I'm not here to say one way or the other, but there are questions. And for me, if there's a really big gift like that, I wouldn't announce it, not until I knew for sure that it was legit. And I especially wouldn't allow that person a high profile experience like being the commencement speaker. That just sets you up for all sorts of problems. Even if someone had just made a gift of that size, I probably still wouldn't reward them with that. When I've seen donors be commencement speakers, usually it's because they're alumni or have a very long track record with that organization. In this particular case, this individual did not have any track record with the organization. And so to me, it basically looks like their reward for making a large gift was getting to be the commencement speaker. People are going to have different opinions about that, but I'm not sure that that's something, if I were in leadership, that I would want to do. So basically, the bigger the gift, the more due diligence you need to do to make sure that everything's on the up and up. And that's really the lesson, I think, of this story. Well, that's all we've got for today. I'll keep reading the news and bringing to you my commentary on fundraising news articles as I see them. But we've got some great interviews coming up in the coming weeks that I think you're going to really enjoy. Anyway, I'll talk to y'all later. Now, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider. As always, I'm your host, Tom Dauber. Thank you for joining me as we journey together toward major gift mastery on the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast.